It is about 7 p.m. on the 29th of December 2020. It's a Tuesday evening and there's a few days to go until the year ends. My name is Arran Hunt. I'm a partner at Stacey Hammond and I head up the Migration Partners team. As always, this video is not taken as being legal advice. It is not legal advice, it's just our comments on immigration in New Zealand in general, what's going on. If you want legal advice, get in touch with us via email. Right now our offices are officially closed. I am still working and available, but only via email. There's been no news in the past week as New Zealand generally sort of shuts down. This is our Christmas time. This is our summer, sorry, more correct. Summer down here in New Zealand, and between Christmas and New Year, a lot of firms will shut down for several weeks and actually be out of the office and have holidays with their family. The government does the same thing. They have a longer period of holidays, more like a month. During that month, we very rarely see any actual changes to policy because they're not in government, they're on holiday. So there's been no real news, nothing for us to put out there. Before people ask, there has been no news regarding student visas, partners of work visas, retirement visas, all those sorts of things. We know that you guys are very eager to get information about those things. I will let you know when something does take place, but right now, at least for the next few weeks, we're not going to see any sort of change in that because the government is on holiday. Now, if you do have an application with Immigration New Zealand and you'll find that your lawyer or immigration advisor is also on a holiday, which is very, very common, don't panic. As I said in a video recently, Immigration New Zealand are aware that these people are on holiday and they'll give longer periods to respond to any requests. So if they sent out a request, say today, chances are that they're looking for a reply probably in about end of January, start of February. So they do give extra time to respond to their requests this time of year. Immigration New Zealand themselves aren't closed. I'm seeing a lot of guys online saying they're closed for 5th of January. That is incorrect. Immigration New Zealand are still open. Some of their staff will be on holiday, but there will still be staff there working. We did have a holiday on Friday just past Christmas Day, and then yesterday, Monday, being Boxing Day, we sort of pushed it back to the next Monday. So we had a 4-day weekend, which has been lovely. But they will be back in the office now. A lot of their staff will. So if you see emails from Immigration New Zealand, don't be surprised because they are still working. Now, while there's been no real sorts of news in the past week, we did want to raise two things that we have seen in the past week or two. Well, one thing in the last few weeks and one thing in the last few days. So only actually impact a small number of you, but we want to get the information out there for the reasons you'll find out when we cover them. The first thing is about an employment scam we are seeing hitting people in India and the countries around India. We've seen this about 3 or 4 times now. People come to us to ask us about it, whether it was legit, and that's not. The second is some information that was released in the last couple of days about the processing of skilled migrant category applications and how they're taken to allocate to people. Now, if neither of these things interest you, you have to watch the video. It's up to you. I'll take no offense if you stop watching the video, because if it doesn't interest you, it's not really going to cover you, then that is your choice. We are going to start first with the employment scam. Now, we saw this in the UK earlier in the year, but with New Zealand doing so well internationally with COVID-19, we're seeing it here now as well. It's based around an agent, in the case that we're seeing an agent based in India, arranging employment and visas for people to come to New Zealand to work. Now, in this case, the jobs are allegedly with Westfield, who own and operate shopping malls around the world. Now, I do need to clarify very, very clearly that Westfield is not a part of this at all whatsoever. We're 100% certain that they are as annoyed about this as having their name involved with this as anyone who's caught by the scam. Now, for the New Zealand style of the scam, the victim is offered employment and a visa for a fee. The scammer provides what they say is an employment agreement, and also what they say is a visa. Now, we're going to cover both of those separately to hopefully give you an idea as to how to spot these scams in advance. First of all, we cover the situation of how things work in New Zealand. As we've said many times before, the New Zealand border is closed. Now, this means that the vast majority of people who want to come to New Zealand can't get across the border, can't get entrance. There are a few small exceptions we've covered in previous videos. For those wanting to come to New Zealand for work, generally, to make it very, very simple, To overly simplify it, there's those who work in the medical industry and have jobs in the medical industry, so health professionals, doctors, nurses, things like that, they can apply and get border exceptions. There's those who are working on government projects. There's a list of actual government projects or events. There is those who have to have exceptional skills in their field and have an offer here to come to New Zealand to work in those fields for a certain set period of time. And there's those who are earning more than $106,000 New Zealand per annum, which is twice the median wage here. Now, because this scam's coming out of India, I thought I'd say that $106,000 New Zealand is over 5.5 million rupees per year, so it is a fairly significant wage. It's a lot of money for a lot of people in New Zealand. So if you aren't a registered health practitioner, and you're a doctor or a nurse or someone in one of those sorts of areas, if you're not a very high level in your industry, you're not sort of a specialist of world renown, and you're not already earning significant money, it's unlikely you're going to be able to get across the border into New Zealand because the border is closed. It's also very rare for New Zealand companies to seek employees from outside New Zealand, again, unless it's for a very sort of specialist role or a very senior role in the company, and it's a very large company. Generally, New Zealand does not bring in staff from outside of New Zealand. There are two exceptions that are sort of notable. First thing is for horticulture. We bring in staff every year to pick fruit and to work in the horticulture sector. This year they are bringing through a smaller number. They start coming through, I think, in January, a couple of thousand staff. We will provide a link in the description to the NZETA site that lists the employers who are part of that scheme. Though we're fairly certain that those places are already filled for this year, with a rather long sort of backlog of extra places, extra applicants if there's space available. The second is when we see construction workers coming to New Zealand to work on a particular project, usually a large hotel or a large building of some kind. Typically these employees already work for the company overseas, they're just bringing in their staff for a set period. But we wouldn't expect to see that very much right now with the border closed. We haven't seen that for actually any time this year. Otherwise, it's pretty rare to bring in staff from overseas into New Zealand. So if we saw someone saying, hey, we're trying to find staff for a New Zealand job overseas, we would be looking at it with a lot of caution because it's very unusual. Now we're going to turn now to the two documents which they provided to these people who provided it to me. Now, originally I started writing this script because I script these things beforehand, and I was going to go through and actually point out the errors in the employment agreement that was provided to me. But I changed my mind. The reason being is that I don't want to do sort of a how-to video for scammers on how to make more believable documents. I want these documents to look fake because hopefully it will mean more people actually question it. If these documents looked legit, people would be happier with them and more likely to pay for these things. So we're not going to go through and point out these issues. Instead, we're going to encourage anyone who receives an employment agreement from a third party to ask that third party for a contact person at the employer, an email address, so on the basis that it could be to check with them on some point about it. It could be some point of the employment. Hey, I just wanted to ask them a question about the accommodation or about the timings or the dates or something. Now, if the third party, the person who's arranging it, says to you, no, can't do that, then you got a question as to why not. If they give you a free email account, so a Gmail account or a Hotmail account to write to, question that, because these big companies do not use free email services. They have their own email addresses. In this case, so if it was Westfield, you'd think it'd be an @westfield.co.nz email address, or actually Westfield New Zealand's run by Centre Group, so you'd think it'd be a @centregroup.com address. So looking at what the employer is, ask for the address and see whether it matches up. If it is going to be with they might give you a law firm to write to. Quite often we'll draft documentation for our clients. If that's the case, then you'll be able to see at stacehammond.co.nz or at some of the law firm. And you'll be able to then, of course, see that that's actually a law firm. You can see it online. Email them to confirm that it's actually legit. I'd say most times when we've seen these scams come through, the email address is generally a free email address. They're using a Gmail address or some strange sort of free email service for what should be a multi-billion-dollar company. It never made sense, and that's the easiest way, first of all, to spot these as scams. Now the second part is a bit more difficult, and I can understand why people sort of fell for this part of it. The second part is that they were given what looked like a visa and what could be confirmed online on a government website. Now, it's not actually a visa, it is an NZETA. It's New Zealand Electronic Travel Authority. Now, before the border closed, people from a set number of countries could travel to New Zealand without needing to apply for a visa. These are the visa waiver countries. Now, because part of the visa fee, if you apply for a visitor visa, part of your visa fee that you pay goes to help pay for conservation in New Zealand, to help keep New Zealand beautiful. Now, these people weren't, of course, paying for this fee because they had a visa waiver. They come across the border and come to the country straight away without a visa required. So New Zealand government set up the NZETA, which is a thing that you apply for. If you're from a visa waiver country, you pay a small fee, and most of that money goes towards New Zealand conservation to pay for the parks, the walkways in the parks, the huts, all these sorts of things that happen in the conservation land, the forests and the streams and that sort of thing. Now, so the NZETA was provided for that purpose, and it lasts 2 years. Now, with the border closed, the NZETA system is still in place. We aren't sure why, to tell the honest truth, because you can no longer travel to New Zealand on a visa waiver. It's also open to anyone to apply for, even those from non-visa waiver countries, who would typically need a visitor visa to apply, so wouldn't require an NZETA because that's only for visa waiver countries. So in the scammers would apply for an NZETA for the victim, and then would provide the document created by the NZETA to the victim and say, hey, here is your 2-year work visa. The victim could then go to the government website, the NZETA, enter the details and see on their confirmation they had this 2-year NZETA. But it's not a visa. It is just that you've paid that conservation fee to let you come to the country if you were on a visa waiver. In fact, New Zealand doesn't actually provide 2-year work visas, unless it was a 2-year contract. But generally, work visas in New Zealand currently are 6 months or 3 years. There is no 2-year visa related to work. What we're showing you now is what an actual visa looks like. You'll see a name, you'll see a passport number, date of birth, as well as visa conditions, what kind of visa it is, the date of entry, the date of the leave by. If it's for work, it will state on there that you can work for this person at this address or this city. They are quite detailed and they're quite easy to link back to the person via the passport number, the name and the birth date. Now, these are provided as an electronic document. They'll come through as a PDF or as a Word document. Now, because it's electronic, these are also very easy to fake. Now, for that reason, there is the Immigration New Zealand Visa View system, which we'll link to in the description below. This is a service from Immigration New Zealand that allows you to confirm a visa status, that it exists and that it's real. So you can go onto there and check to make sure that the visa that they've provided to you is genuine. If you can't find it in Visa View or it's showing different details, then get hold of Immigration New Zealand. If you can't find it, it could be fake. If it's showing wrong details, then Immigration New Zealand can hopefully fix that. We, on occasion, but very rarely, will see an error on a visa. Very, very rare, and Immigration New Zealand, if they do occur, they're happy to fix them. It could be a minor thing to, excuse me, where it could be the wrong country is on there because that's probably actually the wrong country was put into the form in the first place, or they haven't used an abbreviation for a country, where they've used the full name rather than the abbreviation, things like that. Or it could be an incorrect passport number. Most of these errors come through actually from the details being entered incorrectly into the application in the first place, rather than Immigration New Zealand. So there's an error on there. Chances are it came through from you or from your advisor or your lawyer. Anyway, that's how you check whether a visa is genuine or it actually exists or not. Now, we know that times right now are tough. People are looking for a way to improve their lives and the lives of their family. But there are some bad people out there who are looking to prey on that desperation. So please be careful and confirm any such visa unless you get directly from Immigration New Zealand themselves. If it comes from INZ, you can trust that it's going to be genuine. If it comes from anybody else, you should be questioning it. Now, if it comes through a lawyer, then the lawyer needs to be listed on the New Zealand Law Society Register, which you can search online. You'll find me on there. If you get it through an immigration agent, they have to be registered with the LIAA, which will link to it below as well. You can search for agents there, make sure they actually are genuine. People that came to me with these employment agreements and these questions did the smart thing in that they actually questioned it and looked for advice as to whether it was genuine or not before they sort of relied on that visa and booked their flights. It's better to question these things, as was suggested, than to lose money. And what a very hard time for most people. So, and honestly, right now, if someone wants to sell you a job and a visa in New Zealand, they are trying to scam you. Nobody in New Zealand will charge you to give you a job. That would be very unusual in this country and possibly illegal. Okay, so the second part of today's video, unfortunately I've just been through editing the video and this entire segment was out of focus. I don't know how that took place. So we're recording it again and you'll notice a slight change because I had to set up the camera again. Now we wanted to look at the skilled migrant category waiting times, the allocation times. Now Santiago Novillo, sorry if I get the name wrong, put in an OIA request looking for information about allocation times to Immigration New Zealand, and they provided an absolute wealth of information as to the skilled migrant process and how long things are taking to be allocated. So Santiago, if you see this, thank you for doing the OIA request. It's been very helpful and hopefully provides some clarity to a lot of folk who are out there waiting for their applications to be allocated. And there's a lot of information in there. We're not going to go through all of it. We are going to look at actually just the numbers from the letter that Immigration New Zealand provided. Now, as of, and we'll bring it on the screen at the same time so you can see it in front of you without having to go to the link. Now, as of 20 November 2020, there was 10,381 non-priority skilled migrant applications. Now, these with skilled migrant, of course, the application takes place when you actually send in the application itself. Now, you have the original expression of interest, the EOI, which goes into the pool, which would typically are drawn every 2 weeks. They haven't been since March this year, sorry. Feels like a very long time ago. They then get drawn, they get looked over by Immigration New Zealand. If they meet the criteria and the points are all there, then Immigration New Zealand will send through an invitation to apply an ITA, at which point the applicant has 4 months to do the application itself, the true application. That's then sent off in paper form to the Immigration New Zealand office, and that's when the actual application takes place. These numbers, not the EOI numbers, these are the numbers of the guys who have gone through the EOI, who have done that process, put together the application and sent it into immigration. So 10,381 who are sitting there currently. There was 2,500 accredited employer applications, which was interesting. Now we usually call those residents from work applications. There's also a few other smaller categories we're not going to go over. Now these are the non-priority applications. Priority applications for those two categories get will get allocated within 2 weeks. Now for priority you need to either have a job that requires registration, so it could be lawyer, doctor, accountant, that sort of thing, or earning more than $106,000 per year. Now those are allocated within 2 weeks, so all the priority applications have taken place. These are the non-priority ones, which is the vast majority. Now of those, there's 8,767 who are onshore skilled migrants and 2,500 who are residents from work. There is a small number who are offshore for residents from work and about 1,500 who are skilled migrants who are offshore. Now offshore applications of these types are not being processed at present because the visa, if granted, cannot be used, so it's illegal for Immigration New Zealand to grant that visa, so they're not being processed. They will stay unprocessed until the border opens or the government makes a change. Again, this is not Immigration New Zealand's choice, this is the government themselves making that choice as to what can be processed. The letter then shows the number of unallocated applications from each month. Now, from this we can see that we are nearing the end of the June 2019 applications, and most likely since this letter was drafted on the 18th of December, they've now allocated those to officers. There's 772 in July to allocate next. Now, you'll see there's no applications from April due to the lockdown, and only a small number in May when the lockdown was lifted. And then, of course, there is a massive jump in June as Immigration New Zealand caught up from all those forms they would have received during the lockdown period. Next, we have the weekly allocation numbers from August onwards. Now, August is when they started doing these applications again. Till then, they were just sitting there waiting. We've put those numbers into Excel to try and get a rough idea on how long it's taking to allocate sort of each month. What we're seeing is that for each month of applications, it's about 5 or 6 weeks of allocation time to actually allocate them. So it means that, say, in 6 months' time, we may be 4 to 5 months further through the allocation. So things are actually getting slower as the number of applications that were made is outpacing the number of allocations being done. So if nothing changes, then we would see the application backlog in June, the 1288, being allocated in the sort of December 2021 to February 2022. However, things won't remain the same. That is still a year or more away, and we expect to see a number of applications being withdrawn from those who are sadly unable to retain their employment and find replacement employment that is skilled. There's also, we're hearing things about possible changes to work visas that may cause some people to be unable to sustain their employment to get residency. We're still waiting to get confirmation about that before we sort of go into the details of what we are hearing. But the main issue isn't so much it's not Immigration New Zealand. This comes down to, I've said this before as well, that this comes down to the number of residence visas that the government is allowing immigration to grant. The government sets a target. This is the number that you can grant of residence visas every single year, and that number was reduced under the previous government, and that's when we saw the sort of backlog starting to add up because immigration had more applications than they were able to grant. The government hasn't provided new figures. We're sort of hoping they would with the Labour government coming to power on their own and no longer having the shackles of the other parties involved, who, at least one of them was very anti-immigration. But with the border control in place and the border being closed, we can't see the current government increasing that number at least until the border is open. So it could be another year or so until the border opens. That's our expectation, before the government actually says, okay, we're going to allow some more residents to remain in the country. But of course, so much can happen between now and then. We are seeing this whole epidemic as being a constantly changing thing. So right now, that's our best sort of guess, but it's going to keep on changing. We've got another year to go, we think, and who knows where it's going to go. And that's about it we have for today. Hopefully this has stayed in focus this time, and I can stop recording finally and get this video edited and uploaded. If you liked the video, please click on like. It really does help us out with YouTube algorithms, and if you want to be know about future videos, click subscribe so you get notified about any new uploads. We try and do a video a week, but I don't want to do videos if there's nothing actually to report on, so it might be a bit quieter the next couple of weeks. Otherwise we'll do videos whenever required and if there's something new to report or to let you know what's going on. Until next time, and perhaps for the final time for 2020, kia kaha and stay safe.